The once feared Sacho alliance had been broken up and consumed by the British Empire. The first of Japan's main islands was now lost to the Japanese, and the biggest island of Honshu was falling step by step to the advancing redcoats on multiple fronts. The closer they got to the historical core of Japan, the more intense the resistance became. To deal with any potential stubbornness, the British deployed their heavy artillery, the likes of which few Japanese had ever seen. There were other cases of stubbornness, though, that required a different approach. Very good of you to come. You didn't expect me to show up. I'm seasoned against having expectations with you. Are you angry? Not as such. Happy? It's good to see you again. Are you sure? Of course I'm... What are these questions you're bombarding me with? Mr. Cartwright suggested that you were quite angry at me for having broken certain orders. Mr. Cartwright is disappointed that he didn't get a better leash on you, but while it seems I have wasted his time, it is probably for the best. You mean you're okay with it? You've made quite a name for yourself. That's the whole point of this expedition. You might not have done it as I would have ordained, but something about Dorian's reports reminded me of my own tutor's constant patronizing. I remembered how angry I was that no one would trust me. Then I thought that must be what you feel here on these forsaken islands. You've done perfectly well, and the kinks are not beyond ironing out. You've not even reached your full height, and yet you have outshone half of my command staff. How could I find time to be angry when I'm busy feeling proud? Father! Oh, steady on now. You didn't do this to Dorian, did you? How embarrassing. He's fallen ill, I think. Someone fetch the tea. Welcome back to Honourable Gentlemen. To start things off, we're going to go for a battle on the front line, utilising our newly brought up artillery. This Yodo stack that was hanging around runs away when I challenge it with all the troops that I have hanging around, and that leaves it in the perfect position for me to swap these conscripts in the main army here with our newly created howitzers and go right on the offensive. It's a balanced engagement and the enemy force is spec'd out for a melee charge by the looks of things, so that's good for them since we're going to be forcing them to charge at us with our long-ranged advantage. As things start off, we hit them with the shrapnel shot. This is a especially dangerous way of using the artillery. You can't do it all the time, just now and again. You can shoot a big cone of shrapnel that gets loads of kills, even if it doesn't really hit properly because it's such a wide spread. After that, we just fire regular explosive shots, and those too will do plenty of damage to these units. We actually can't see a lot of the enemy army because they're all ninja units, they're hidden, but they're around there somewhere and hopefully they'll get hit on the way. They've got quite a lot of these lancers and they're going to send a whole load of them to attack our right flank. We're shooting them, but we're not doing enough damage to stop these units in their tracks, perhaps because our anti-cavalry stakes are actually blocking shots, as someone in the comments informed me was possible. So a decent number of them make it. They have to go through the stakes, so they'll take losses there, but really not enough. The unit's still intact, and now they'll blast through our men, who aren't very good in melee. Some of them are able to form anti-cavalry squares, which presumably helps in some way. The units in squares did seem to perform better at the very least. There was a small attack happening on the left flank, but as you can see they spent a lot of time just wandering through the stakes and getting themselves killed, so much less effective. Over on the right though, they've already routed one of my units, the one that wasn't in anti-cavalry square. The squares seem to be holding on a bit better there, so that's a good sign. Then of course there are all of these ninjas to deal with. They appear in front of us, we'll have a bit of time to shoot them, but not enough time. My men here appeared to be not especially proactive about shooting them, so lots of enemies charge in, and this is where we're going to have a problem, because despite that balance bar where we have a gigantic advantage, now these melees are very much in the enemy's advantage, so we're going to start taking losses very quickly. Over here another unit's about to be taken down by just a handful of Tetsubo ninja who are just hacking through them and are very unlikely to be killed in the melee themselves, and there's the rout. Our square right on the end is holding on against another cavalry charge and some ninjas trying to break in. Looks like they're surviving for now. I'm folding my right flank to provide some supporting fire, which may very well hit our own troops, but this is our main way of getting rid of the Tetsubo ninjas even after they've engaged, so we just have to tolerate that. They do also have a few high quality line infantry units which are battling with us, but not many of them are alive after our artillery bombardment, so they're not having a huge effect, and our unengaged units will be able to shoot back. Now, just a case of trying to grind things out to a win. There aren't very many of the enemies left, so we'll win eventually with melees, but I just wanted to adjust things to try and make it better, pulling back to force the enemy's flanks to be exposed so we could attack them from behind. In this case, these enemies just rout before we get the chance to do that, and at this stage, everything has now routed. So we won in the end, a nice decisive victory. I wouldn't say the artillery was critical to that victory, but it certainly helped diminishing the enemy's numbers. The enemy lost less than double what we did, so it wasn't one of the really good victories we've been used to, but useful all the same. With that stack gone, the front line is a lot safer. There's still a couple of stacks of enemy stuff around, but we also have a couple of stacks, so things are stable, and with the defender's advantage, that all should be fine now. We're now going to switch over to Joss Arton, and he's going on an adventure. Kyushu is secured, so we're going to take the main force to start securing the islands around Kyushu, which could be a source of future troubles. Here, Tanegashima has 3 stacks of troops on it, and Joss is just going to have to see if he can get through all of them. Thought I'd ride to congratulate you, Mr. Hook. You win. Island's all yours now because I've been thrown back out into the blue by Emperor General. Not complaining. So if you fancy stamping your face into everything and renaming the island after yourself and all that, now's gotta be the time. Must say though, that weird ape you've dressed up as an officer and sent out on patrol is probably gonna need some house training. He's proper savage, and I've seen it all out in the Pacific, I assure you. When we parted ways, he was threading himself this thing, hard to describe. I'll be technical about it and say vertebrae necklace, and you can work out the rest. I'll be on rinky-dinky Tanegashima Island if you want to pop in. We'll be getting a load of shipments in once the sea's secure, so if you want anything dropped off from Hong Kong, let me know. Don't get too drunk without me. We haven't actually quite finished taking Kyushu, and that's what George Hook is dealing with now. There was a rebel castle off in the east somewhere, and finally he has dealt with them now. So now we really do have all of Kyushu under control. George Hook's force needs to replenish a bit, and soon we'll be ready for other projects. As for Joss, he was immediately attacked by the Tanegashima, but they only came with 1 army. I expected them all to gang up on me here. The fact they've only brought 1 means we're okay for this battle at least, because we can just do the old stand in a line and shoot them tactic, and we should have the advantage there. As the enemy advance, we hit them with some of our naval support fire, getting some decent accuracy here. Always less deadly than it looks, but still, very nice to have those early casualties. And one side benefit is that it causes the enemy to start running at us rather than walking, and that speeds the battle up. Don't have to wait so long for them to get here. I missed it while filming the replay, but they actually had their own naval support shooting a couple of shots at our line. Only one of them actually hit, and it didn't do too much damage, so we got away with it there. I think they just have a couple of gunboats or something nearby. Anyway, soon enough, the enemy are within range and we can start firing. We slightly outrange them with our line, so they have to walk through a hail of bullets before they can return fire. And because their lines are all messy and out of formation, in some cases units are arriving before the rest of the line, and then we can focus fire them to get lots of damage on them. And I think just overall, this might have reduced the extent to which they were firing back. Hard to say, really. On our left flank, we were quite outflanked by the enemy's line. It was very long compared to ours. You can see in the background there, we're just blowing up their centre, all well and good. But here on the left, I'm using revolver mercenaries to clear things up. I move them over. You have to move them up very close. But once they are there, they just be all badass, dual-wielding revolvers, and they don't really have to reload. It doesn't simulate the capacity of the revolvers, I don't think. They just have a really short reload time, so they blast away and annihilate whatever's in front of them. A very handy unit to have. Anyway, we won, as you might expect. We simply outshot them, and that's our first battle with the Tanegashima all sorted out. We're still in good enough condition to fight another battle, and I was presuming I would have to, because they could now just come over with other armies and try again. That's something the AI likes to do, but in this case it didn't, so we'll just wait and see what we can do in this turn here. First I've got John Alcocks. He's going to now advance towards the capital after having checked in with his son, so we'll just make a beeline for Kyoto and see what happens on the way. One thing that happened was we encountered an army of ninjas entirely made up of ninja. I'm going in for a auto-resolve night attack, which technically would be a bad idea against an army of all ninjas if we're trying to shoot them, but whatever. I'm not sure if night attack actually has any effect on auto-resolve. We won the battle there, as you might expect, and we'll also be able to take a nearby castle. I'll just conquer my way down towards Kyoto because the main road goes straight there from here. Plenty of enemy armies in the way, and it's just going to be up to us to deal with that. Just to the north, Dorian is also going to make a cheeky advance. The situation here is not so simple because we can be attacked from multiple directions, so I'm going to split his main army up into two groups, both of them being strong enough to defeat the enemies in their respective areas. So this way my front line's somewhat secure. Not completely, but the AI might not notice that. And Charles is going to swoop in now in front of Dorian to upstage him and defeat the nearby enemy army. I need to break him out of the main force to do that, but that's no problem. Defeating this army doesn't really matter. What I was thinking is that killing these guys will stop them from making a suicide attack on one of my nearby castles and possibly forcing me to fight it in order to beat them with reasonable losses. Anyway, Josarton now has to besiege something on Tanegashima. I'm going for this one on the end of the island, even though the one in the middle would probably be easier, just because then we can only focus on one direction. We can't be attacked from multiple armies from two sides. It should be a bit easier to organize this way. Back over at the part of the front line that John recently abandoned, the Wakayama are currently besieging Hamaji here, but we can quite easily sally out against them using our backup army. So now we have two armies to attack their one, since their reinforcements were too far away. We don't really have an advantage here. I almost expected an auto-resolve, but looks like we'll have to fight it. We have so many units and artillery on our side that really shouldn't be much of an issue.
Attention! Now then, you pasty lot have got another show on today. I want to see the straightest lines this side of the 49th parallel, and the quickest shooting this side of your crusty little bunks. The good news is that there's none of those pyjama prancers out there, so you can stand well clear of the cheeky bounders and get your pension earned like a reasonable gentleman. We'll have howitzers blasting out the whole time, so I don't want to see you kiddies turning around to see what all the fuss is about every time there's a big bang. Face forwards, and if all the noise makes you wet yourself, don't you be being like Corporal Gascoigne and hosing down your cartridges. Right then, if you've had enough chat from Nanny, it's time for the warm-ups. I'll have 3 rounds of Rule Britannia, star jump in every verse, and high knee in every chorus, and if I hear a single misnote, you'll be starting again whether the enemy are here or not.
The enemy wander on over to our lines and we start shooting them. How about that? And while the combat is going on, we can keep using the howitzers to fire at these men since they're not too close to us. And that will not only reduce their numbers a bit faster, but it means some of the units are constantly getting the artillery fire morale shock, making them more likely to rout. Often units don't like to rout at all and will just fight to the end, but in this battle things were a bit easier. They were willing to run away, which was the right decision. They probably should have done that from the very beginning because they didn't have the numbers to outshoot us anyway. There we go, decisive victory with minimal casualties on our side. A couple of units are down to low strength after the last few fights these armies have had to go through. And because we don't have an officer leading the main army there, it can't replenish outside of the castle. So they are going to be damaged for a while. We'll put a few of the most damaged units inside the castle because we'll need our forces to be ready for the next couple of waves, which you can already see coming in. The replenishment will be very slow, so it's almost going to do nothing at all doing this, but perhaps it's better than nothing. Well, hopefully it is anyway. Now back over to Tanegashima, where Josarton faces a sally, and this battle is, for all intents and purposes, the same as the battle he just won on the way into the island, so nothing too special here. Not a very nice day for a line battle, it's all foggy and rainy, but the artillery still seems to be able to see something out there, getting some hits early on, and it will continue to do so. Once they're closer, our naval support charges up and I give them a volley. They did a decent job of dodging it, but we still get a few direct hits that will rack up the kills and disrupt their formation, which is perhaps more important, since the disrupted formations then do so badly when they just charge right into our line without reforming. So as you can see, the battle will now get started. Both sides can't really see each other. With the mist and the smoke combined, we're just firing at shapes here. Their most interesting move was to try and send spears around our flank, but my dragoons just skirmished away and shot them to pieces, so not much came of that. On the other flank, I sent in my revolvers again, and just like in the previous battle, they just cut nearby enemies to shreds, and since the enemy weren't even paying any attention to them in this case, they just got loads of free kills, accelerating the rate at which the enemy army was demolished. We now have a few units down to about half strength as a result of the gradual attrition through these battles. The enemy are firing back, but we take the castle right away, allowing us to replenish, and the enemy army doesn't besiege our castle there, which it could have done to stop us replenishing, so that's kind of them. Now back to Hamaji again. One of these waves is coming in. This time it's the Yodo. They've got loads of cavalry here, which means this army isn't very well suited to making a castle assault, but they're doing it anyway, so maybe that will help us out. We also have a reinforcement army, not necessarily all that helpful for a castle defense because it needs to get in there in time, but we'll see how it performs. They came onto the field in the middle of a load of trees. That meant I couldn't immediately break open the artillery and just start shooting. We had to very slowly move them elsewhere. The enemy reacted by sending some cav to attack my reinforcements. I very sloppily there allowed them to actually hit some of my infantry with a lancer charge, but then my own lancers are there. They'll have some anti-cavalry bonuses, so hopefully we can grind out a win. More lancers are on the way in. My line infantry have formed up to fire at them, but perhaps a combination of the trees and the rain means they don't really do much damage, and a lot of them will make it to our line. They go for our guard unit, but they can form an anti-cavalry square, and I just about did that in time, so with any luck that will allow them to now hold off in the ensuing melee, and we can always fold units around to get a few shots onto those guys as well. Of course, at the same time, the castle is experiencing the usual sort of battle we see. I'm drawing the enemy towards the inner part of the fortifications and then shooting them, but I actually don't quite have enough gunners in the castle to cover all of the angles, and you can see here where they're attacking. I don't have many troops on the wall behind providing supporting fire. Additionally, they do have quite a lot of troops who are melee troops, meaning my men, once stuck into those close-range fights, don't do very well. More and more cavalry kept coming over here to join this fight with our reinforcements, so we haven't made much progress, and many of those cav are very good cavalry units, so it's taking a long time to kill them. The enemy are making short work, though, of my first wave of defenders. In some cases it was just garrison infantry and levies, but in others we've got proper line infantry only under strength, so it doesn't take much to destroy the entire unit in some cases. And now they're making a lot of progress. They're coming into the inner part of the castle, wiping out more units here where we just have tiny pockets of resistance, and while the balance bar says we're still going to win, we might have to hurry up and get our men over to the castle from this reinforcement pocket. They're just about now finishing off the men that are trying to stop them from the enemy's cavalry, so we can make some progress, and just in time because they're actually taking the capture point now. Luckily, there's a fight on the northern part of the castle that's going much better, so I moved most of the troops from there to come and now stop the enemy taking the capture point. A melee will break out, and we'll do our best to hold the enemy in place while we get men around them to shoot them as we usually do, but it looks like we're going to take a lot of casualties here, whatever happens.
Are you certain this is the list?
Think so. That's the stamp from the JEF, isn't it?
Yes, but, well, what are they doing up there? All this equipment they've ordered is for opium shops. Don't they want more bullets or something?
Dunno. We've got all the stuff though, so they came to the right place.
That's for Chinese opium work, not Japanese. I thought the plan with the Japs was to just set up a naval base or something. That Major General who used to hang around here is leading them. What was his name?
Mr. Alcock?
Alcock? Something like that, yes. He was constantly asking around trying to get the governor to attack China for this or that reason. I think he's a bloody sprog in a sweet shop up there now.
They've asked for a lot of data on the tea trade as well. Think that's him?
Tea? He hates the stuff. Not just him up there, though. It's a real freak show, I've heard. Whatever the case, better just ship it off and blame him when the crown comes looking for their stock. That usually works.
We have the manpower to eventually make our plan work here, but the losses we take enacting it are great indeed. There we go, we finally routed everything there, but bodies all over the floor, and no doubt many of them were from the friendly fire we were taking by just shooting into those melees. Still, we've succeeded overall. A couple of cavalry units stayed around at the end for whatever reason. This one takes a point-blank range volley without really taking many casualties. Don't think my troops are having a very good day, or maybe these men have somehow got their armor value up so high they've become bulletproof. I believe it is possible to have armor so high that bullets have a chance to not kill you when they hit. Anyway, the other cavalry unit that they had was running towards my reinforcements, and they were more obliging in that they died when we fired at them. Not quickly enough, and their morale is still high enough that even with their entire army killed except for them, they still wanted to charge in and fight in melee right up to the very end. We'll win now by shooting them at point blank range, but still surprisingly difficult to get rid of, these men have proven to be. There we go, that's the end of that. We won, but the casualties were enormous. We lost about half of our army in total, and perhaps a third of it was completely destroyed in that their units were lost, so now we can't replenish them to get them back. Pretty nasty. It went worse than expected, I must say, especially because I thought the enemy army was so unsuitable for a siege assault. We are immediately put under siege again. That means we won't be able to replenish, and the Wakayama are supporting their allies there, so looks like another hard fight will be required to completely resolve this situation. With so many units damaged, I needed to reinforce this position if I could. I've got two options, either these troops down to the south or bring John Alcock back down from the north. He's meant to be here really, but I'm going to leave him on his one-man quest to get to the capital and instead just empty this other nearby castle to provide supporting troops. Does mean they could go around and then attack that castle if they want to, but they might not think of that. Dorian is going to have to double back on himself because we have left an enemy castle behind our lines, so I'll take his army backwards to go deal with that. Can't get there quite yet, but soon enough he will. This will now leave Charles free to continue off to the east, where there are more targets to go for. You can see this Totori army has just gone and sat on the coast there, allowing us to walk right past it on the main road and just take the castle that was behind them. So we'll do just that, perhaps forcing them to attack us now once we're inside the fortifications. Well, that was going to be my plan actually, but you can see we have the option to vassalize the United States of America in this province, and how could we possibly pass up that sort of opportunity? So there we go, the USA is back as our vassal. Rule Britannia intensifies. The Totori army disappears because they don't have military access with the United States, so they were just thrown off somewhere, not into the adjacent province by the looks of things, so no idea where they are. Interestingly, the United States officers appear to have full Japanese names, so either they're Japanese people pretending to be American or the other way around, not quite sure. Whatever the case, Charles will leave them behind and continue on his way. Now there's an army that's going to be blocking John Alcock very soon. That's almost all ninjas. So to deal with this, I'm going to move out of the castle and try and set up an ambush here. I'll lure them to attack the castle, and I can just about get my zone of control onto the nearby road, because an army that's so built for melee attacks will be quite difficult to defeat in a castle defense, because they'll just run in and beat us all up at close range. So hopefully an ambush will give us more space to play with so we can avoid getting caught in melee. With Jos, I wanted to wait a couple of turns and replenish his army there and get some more units together to act as a garrison for the castle, but the Tanegashima army nearby came and attacked, so that's a pretty easy looking siege defense, the exact sort of thing we've seen several times before, so perhaps I'll throw a few highlights from that little fight at the start of the next episode. That is it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, and very special thanks to the Officially Devin patrons for making all this happen. We're going to have a bit of trouble with all of those ninja we saw earlier, and I might get all of the men I have waiting around on Kyushu to actually go and do something on the next episode of Honourable Gentlemen.